going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking every single movie that I saw in the month of August. I will admit I did miss a lot of these movies. A couple of them were because I had heard terrible things and I did not want to go waste my time seeing movies that were really bad. So before I get too far into this, I am going to give you guys a little list of all of the movies that I missed, and then we'll go ahead and rank them. Well, the ones that I have seen. I think that made sense. Anyways, we're gonna... Okay, so starting with the movies that we missed, there are two movies that I missed that I do still really want to see. I just haven't had the chance to go see them yet. The movie Trap, starring Josh Hartnett. I was incredibly excited for this movie. I really could not wait for this one to come out. And then the week of, I ended up doing something the following week with my sister's birthday. So I've been really busy and I haven't had a chance to see this one. But it looked good to me and I still want to see it. And then the other one is Blink Twice, which came out last week. I ended up seeing another movie instead. And I will probably get around to watching that at some point this week. But those two are not going to be included in this ranking. And then as for some of the really bad movies that came out this month that are not going to be on this ranking, I did not want to see Harold and the Purple Crayon. I did not want to see the Borderlands movie that came out, and I really did not want to see the Crow remake. I've seen a couple of good things about the Crow remake, but the majority of the stuff about it is actually like purely negative. And then on top of that, I think there's a movie that released literally today called like Afraid, and it's some like AI horror movie. I did want to see that one because I've heard it's so bad that it's good, but I haven't had a chance to see it, so those are not going to be included on this ranking. But that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the 7 movies that I have seen. Alrighty, and coming in dead last place, in my opinion, is the movie The Union. This was a Netflix original that starred Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry. And I personally actually had a little bit of hope for this movie because personally I'm a big fan of Halle Berry. I really don't think she's done anything wrong. We're going to pretend that that movie doesn't exist. But overall, I think that she's just such a likable person, and she's usually really fun in a lot of roles similar to this one. But overall, this movie was just incredibly boring. I think that overall the two main characters, they're supposed to be like exes and ex-lovers or whatever, and they're supposed to have this like really weird like will they won't they thing, and they have zero chemistry whatsoever. A lot of the humor in this movie is really bad. There's a joke about Mark Wahlberg like trying to, you know, start a car or whatever, and he's confused because the car is pushed to start. And I get what they're going for here, right? I think that that's cool. Push to starts have been a normal thing in cars since 2014. It's been 10 years. If you made this joke like 2 or 3 years ago, I think that that would have been totally relevant. It's almost harder to find a car nowadays that doesn't have push to start. So as far as I'm concerned, that joke fell completely flat, and pretty much every joke in this movie fell completely flat. It's a movie about spies, and it's so painfully uninteresting. There's not a whole lot going on. The agency, they couldn't even come up with a more clever name than The Union. And they just tried to do that like basic thing in spy movies where they're just like, we're like what the CIA and the FBI want to be, but we're actually smart and we're even more undercover than them. And it doesn't work. This entire movie just does not work. Now, coming in 6th place, this is a movie I really wanted to enjoy, but I just could not get on board with it. It's the movie Cuckoo, starring Hunter Schafer and Dan Stevens. Personally, I think that both of those actors did a really good job in their respective roles. And I think that, for the most part, there's a lot to like about this movie. Like, they had a lot of really bold concepts, and they really wanted to do something that was different from a lot of horror movies nowadays. A lot of horror movies right now are pretty, like, copy and paste. Oh, this person gets possessed. They do these random things. One person has to eventually, like, kill the person who's possessed or get, like, an exorcism or something like that. But this one, they had a more interesting concept than that. They were like, okay, cuckoo birds, they are invasive species or whatever. They typically go and like, you know, leave their eggs in nests of other birds and let the other birds raise them and stuff like that. And it kind of creates this like really weird thing in society. And they were like, okay, what if we did that, but like with like weird humanoid creatures? And I'm so confused about what the random like the creatures were, because there were like people that, you know, are, you know, getting other people pregnant so that they could have this child, and then the child like does like random like weird sound frequencies that like do a weird like time loop effect. And there's so much weird sci-fi element stuff here that could work, but they never really dove deep enough into it. They never did a really good job of explaining what is happening. And by the end of the movie, I had way more questions than answers. And I really did not like that. I also don't like the fact that this movie is kind of a psychological thriller, and almost every single horror sequence ends with Hunter Schafer's character getting injured and then waking up the next day in a hospital bed and being like, what happened? And everybody being like, oh, you're just being overdramatic and like nothing really happened. You're just going insane. You ended up like, you know, doing some stupid thing and you got yourself hurt. And it becomes a point where, since our main character is the only person experiencing these things and there's no other like evidence that, you know, stuff is happening to her, it seems like everything's just in her head. And I don't like that. I feel like they should have made more of an effort to have like other people experiencing the same trauma and having her actually interact with more characters who are experiencing what she's experiencing, because it does feel like a lot of the stuff that's happening in this movie just are not real, and it's so weird. But overall, I think this movie is bold. They had a lot of things that they wanted to attempt, and they really went for it, and I appreciate it for that. Coming in 5th place, we have the movie It Ends With Us. There was a lot of controversy around this movie, so like I didn't end up making a review about this movie. But when I left the theater, I actually personally really enjoyed this movie. I think that August has been one of the best months for movies so far, and like this is the one that I have in 5th place. But I think that this one's also pretty good. It has a very important message about like being in an abusive relationship and realizing that the relationship you're in is toxic. And it does a really great job of showcasing how love can really blind you to some of the negative things that are happening in life. Because in this relationship, she meets the guy who she's with. I think his name's like Ryland or something like that. That's probably so wrong. That's probably really incorrect. But she ends up, finding this guy who she ends up like falling madly in love with. And then they start like getting together and doing these things and being like, partners. And every once in a while something would happen and he like hits her or something like that. But they keep playing it off in the movie as an accident. And the entire time I'm kind of like, this is really weird. Like, why are they doing it like this? Like, this just doesn't make sense. And then by the end of the movie, she has like a flashback sequence where she kind of realizes, oh my God, this entire time he's been intentionally doing this stuff. It's not an accident. He's just really aggressive and he doesn't know how to control his anger or whatever. And it does a really interesting job of kind of like setting like seeds for us to be like, oh, this is a really toxic relationship, without explicitly being like, hey, this is a toxic relationship. And I think that one of the only problems that I have with this movie is they should have made it a little more obvious that like he's doing these things intentional, because for a lot of them it could kind of be brushed off as like, oh well, he's not that bad. And I think that that's a really big problem, that some people are going to leave this movie and not fully understand why he is as shitty of a person as he is. But that being said, I think that for the most part, this movie works. There's a lot of actually like really funny sequences in this movie, which I really enjoyed, because whenever they're dealing with a lot of like really heavy like moments or whatever, like there's a lot of sequences that go really dark into, like sexual assault and stuff like that. But they're usually able to break the tension with like cute little moments of like her and her best friend having a sweet moment, or like the other guy who like was her childhood crush or whatever, them having nice sweet little moments together as well. So like they did a good job of like balancing the heavy tones and being able to like lighten it so that whenever like everything like went back to normal, whatever, everything feels fine, and then like it would go intense, and then something to once again knock it back down. So overall, I like this movie, and I definitely think that it could have been better, but it's not bad. I don't know why people hated on this movie. And coming in 4th place, this is a movie I was not expecting to like. It's a movie called Incoming. This is a Netflix original comedy, and I feel like this movie is very similar to movies like Mean Girls, essentially. If you watch the movie Grown Ups 2, this entire movie is practically the last 30 minutes of that movie where they're at like a crazy party and there's just a bunch of different like friend groups doing a bunch of random different things at the, same place. And it's very similar to that. There's a big old party. It's the first week of school. These kids are coming in as freshmen and they really want to make a name for themselves. And they end up going to a high school party. Some of them end up doing a lot of ridiculous stuff. 2 friends end up being told like, hey, you guys aren't cool enough to go to this party. So they have some weird little side quest that's really entertaining as well. And overall, I think that this movie is a fun, simple coming-of-age story. It has a lot of really good humor in it, which I honestly was surprised about, because all of the like things that I saw advertised for this movie were not great. Like, I feel like they did not know how to advertise this movie, because every single like little scene that they posted before this movie came out was painfully bad. But the actual like comedy and everything in this movie, so solid. I really enjoyed it. And then the main actor, Mason Thames, very talented. I think he's going to be a huge star come like 2 or 3 years from now. So overall, I liked it. And if you have a Netflix account, you should definitely check it out. Alrighty, and to start off our top 3, we have the coming of age movie Dee Dee. I really enjoyed this movie. Coming of age movies are kind of like my favorite things ever. Like, I'm gonna be totally honest. If I had to rank like different like niche genres of movies, coming of age would probably be my top 3. So overall, this movie is just kind of a movie that is really for me, and I loved everything they did with this. I think that the actors and actresses in this movie were very, very solid. I think that the humor was fantastic. The time period piece of this movie was great. I think that they did a great job of showcasing how social media can affect the young people in this movie, because Dee Dee has MySpace and he's seeing like, oh, this person that I really like likes this thing, so let me try to like pretend like I like this thing. And it does a really good job of kind of showcasing how like we try to make different versions of ourselves for social media, and we try to like change who we are as a person so that other people would like us. And then by the end of the movie, it shows kind of the negative effects of that and shows that you're better off just being yourself. And I really like that. I think that this movie has a very powerful message, and overall, it's just a really, really good coming of age movie. So if you're a fan of coming of age movies, 10 out of 10 would recommend it. Really, really enjoyed this one. Alrighty, and coming in second place, our runner-up is Alien Romulus. I have been watching horror movies a lot on this channel. This is something that I've been trying to like get into a little bit more. I've always been too scared to watch horror movies, but I'm like, you know what? These are movies I need to really start watching because they're some of the best movies to watch in theaters. And I've been trying to find horror movie that scares me. And this is the first one that really, really got me. The Offspring at the end of this movie is absolutely terrifying. The way that they did the pacing and everything, so you feel like, oh, everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay. They're going to go into cryosleep. Everything's going to be fine. And then, bam, this movie keeps going. It is structurally just really well crafted. I feel like a lot of people, whenever there's a movie like this where instead of it being 3 acts, it's 4 acts, they get a little like impatient and they kind of like feel like the movie's just dragging on. But I think that Fede Alvarez, did I pronounce it right? Fede Alvarez, the director of this movie, really had a vision for what he was doing and really knew how to film it. I think that the direction here is fantastic. The cinematography is great. All of the visual effects are absolutely fantastic. I mean, when they go into outer space for the first time, it is just so stunning. And I just absolutely love the way that they designed the, you know, interior of the spaceships that they're going into and everything. It just looks like an incredible film. The horror elements of it are fantastic. Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson carried this movie incredibly, incredibly well. And I just really, really enjoyed this movie. I will say this. I have not seen any of the other Alien movies, so I know a lot of people who have been like complaining about this movie and saying that it's not that good are saying it's because it's like, oh, it's derivative of the other Alien movies, or oh, they did this thing that like if you're a fan of the original Alien movie, it should really tick you off that they did this thing. But I personally, this is the first Alien movie I ever watched, so I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was a good stepping in point because as far as I'm concerned, I fully understood everything that was going on, and I was able to get a gist of what's happened in some of the other movies that would potentially lead to this stuff happening. So I thought this movie was great. I think it's one of the best horror movies that is released this year. And I, once again, with 10 out of 10, recommend watching this one in a theater if you still can, because it's so good. But coming in first place, we have one of the most shocking movies of the year. This movie's called Strange Darling. And when I tell you this movie is probably on literally nobody's radar whatsoever, this movie is crazy. I'm going to try to avoid spoiling it for people who have not seen it because this movie is one of the best movies where it comes to like, you want to go see this blind. There's going to be a lot of things that happen in this movie that you're not expecting to happen. And having something potentially spoiled to you about this movie will 100% ruin your viewing experience because there's just so many twists and turns. There's so many different decisions that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Like, oh my God, what is happening right now? They decide to tell this story in a way that it's non-linear. They like to show it from a lot of different people's perspectives. Like they split this movie up into 6 separate chapters, and you'll see like a couple of chapters from the girl's point of view. You'll see one chapter from the guy's point of view. You'll see a chapter from just like the random bystanders' point of views. And it's so interesting how they were able to slowly tell this story, and you're kind of getting this vibe of like, oh, these two people are like having like this really weird cat and mouse like relationship. And then it goes back to the beginning and you're saying, oh, okay, they were like romantically inclined. Something interesting is happening here. What is going on? And overall, it's just a really, really unique theater experience. I think that it's a very well-crafted movie. I think that the way that it's paced is absolutely fantastic, and the way that it's filmed is also just incredibly beautiful. So if you haven't seen this movie, I definitely would once again recommend checking this one out. Willa Fitzgerald, the main actress in this movie, I think 100% deserves a Oscar nomination for leading actress for this movie because by far one of the most inspired performances I've seen this year. She's able to play like so many different characters throughout this movie. Like her character has so many different shifts, and her range in just this one film alone is so captivating. I absolutely loved it. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching, and if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow.